Welcome to another episode of Chax Chat. Join Chad Chilius and me, Dax Castro, where each week we wax poetic about document accessibility topics, tips, and the struggle of remediation and compliance. So sit back, grab your favorite mug of whatever, and let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. Today's podcast is sponsored by Venngage. Venngage is a design platform, and it's not just about creating stunning visuals, but also about inclusivity and accessibility. Venngage doesn't just simplify your design process, but takes it up a notch with built-in accessibility features. Whether you're looking to run an accessibility check on your designs or export them to the PDF UA format, Venngage has you covered. So head on over to venngage.com, that's VENNGAGE.com, and check them out. My name is Chad Chilius. I'm an Adobe certified instructor, as well as Director of Training Solutions and Principal at Chax Training and Consulting.
And my name is Dax Castro. I'm Director of Media Productions here at Chax Training Consulting, and Chad and I are both certified as accessible document specialists. And if you'd like your certification, head over to accessibilityassociation.org/certifications. How you doing, Chad?
Doing well. Fall is here, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
We're getting into some cooler mornings, and the weather is pretty nice here on the East Coast for sure. And,
absolutely.
My wife threw me a surprise birthday party this weekend.
Oh, awesome. A little early birthday because we will be at Max, right?
That's right.
So this show will actually air on Tuesday, right as Max is starting, right? And so we will be in the thick of it, as they say.
It will air on my birthday. Very cool.
That's awesome. Well, happy birthday. Everyone listening, you can all sing him happy birthday at this moment. We'll pause for... No, I'm just kidding. So, well, anyway, I want to get right to this. So today we have a really special guest. This is CEO and founder of Venngage. You've heard us talk about this quite a bit, the accessible design tool. And so welcome, Eugene, to the program. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Dax and Chad. It's a pleasure being here. Really excited to be here today. And happy, early birthday, Chad.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, no, we I stumbled upon Venngage and really, we make no bones about our opinions on Canva. And to be fair, Canva is working on it. It's just a slow churn, right? And it takes time for large organizations who aren't as nimble as some smaller organizations. And this is really where your product just shines, because all of the things we kind of talk to them about doing, you're already there. So I'm curious to know, Chad and I were curious to know the story of how you came from I'm assuming that accessibility was something you added, or was it something that you just had from the beginning?
It definitely was something we added. And I think just like every other design tool out there, we didn't really take accessibility seriously at the start. And our platform has been around for a while. It's about more than 10 years old.
Oh, okay.
And around, I would say about 2 years ago, we kept getting these requests from our users, a lot of them from higher ed, some of them from government, asking us about accessibility. And I'll be honest, back then we were like, what is this? What is this they're asking for? What do you mean an accessibility checker? And all of these questions started coming up. And once in a while, we would get like an actual assessment form, fill it out, and then we would fail those assessments.
Right.
Because, our website and our product wasn't accessible, and we couldn't export the accessible formats that were required. So about 2 years ago, we decided to rebuild our platform for, I would say there was another reason for rebuilding it. But once we decided to rebuild it, we just had to pick what were the core things we wanted to implement in this product. And the main one became accessibility. So when we looked at what we could focus on, right? Do we just want to build do we just want to rebuild the same platform like you said, Canva and a lot of all the other competitors out there have it just be, another version of the same thing.
Yeah.
And we said, no, like, let's build something different. Let's build something that is an unmet need. And it still is an unmet need that our users want. And we looked at everything, but like, accessibility is an unmet need. There is a lot of people who need it, and it doesn't appear that anyone's building it. I mean, I kind of wrote about this in LinkedIn. I was kind of nervous about it, because I still am, that we committed to it. So we made the commitment. We're like, let's build it from the ground up. The main focus will be on accessibility. We will take the accessibility first approach, as opposed to accessibility last approach that most tools take. And we wanted to make sure it wasn't just a plugin or something you had to install later on. We wanted to make it a core experience for any users, even users who don't care about accessibility. And that was one of the core tenets, was that we would expose accessibility to everybody, regardless of whether they knew about it or not. We will make it part of the normal user, and like just any user using it would just be exposed to it. We would try and nudge them towards accessibility, so that whether they care about it or not, whatever the design should end up being a lot more accessible than, if they're just using some other platform, right? So,
well, and that was what was really cool, because when we were looking through the tool, when we were clicking on things, we were getting prompts that would say, hey, this is why heading structure matters. And this is about color contrast. And this is the reading order, and it gives you those little tips and tools to kind of learn, not just here's, check this and see if it passes or not, but it was educational, so that as you kind of clicked on things, if you didn't have that expanded knowledge, if you didn't know the WCAG requirement, that it taught you a little bit while you were doing it. I thought that was such a great feature.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when we surveyed our users, the reality was, the vast majority had no idea about WCAG, and even simple things like color contrast and
Right.
things like nobody had any clue. So we knew that if we had accessibility features, we would have to educate our users and nudge them. I kind of looked at it as, we'll put guardrails in the tool so that, whatever they end up doing, even if they don't follow anything we say, will still end up better than if they didn't
Right.
use our tool, right? And we would put in the extra nudges and the education to slowly push users towards, learning more about accessibility. And we have built it in, like you said, we built it right, the color contrast checkers built right into the color picker. So every time you pick a color, you're seeing, if it's a low contrast, you're seeing a red box and a warning that says that, hey, this isn't, the contrast isn't high enough. So I'm quite sure with repeated usage, people will notice, oh, I should, probably have higher contrast. So,
Right.
Well,
and we have data on that. Yeah. Sorry,
it's such a great approach that you took. You know what I mean? I mean, what you're talking about is what Dax and I do every day, right? I mean, we're kind of advocates. We're trying to get the word out. Why accessibility is important, why it matters. And trying to educate people. I don't know if you guys have ever seen. I think it's a YouTube channel where a guy listens to a song for the first time, and you get to see his experience or his reaction to the song. And I was thinking about this, Dax, when you and I were on a Teams meeting when we were playing around with Venngage, and I wish we would have recorded it, right?
Oh yeah.
Because as we're going through it, we're like, dude, I can add alt text to this figure. Or, Dax is like, dude, the color contrast picker is, and we're discovering all of this stuff like on the fly. And it was such a really cool experience. And we were so impressed, because Dax and I are used to products that honestly, have implemented minimal accessibility, right? There's always room for improvement. And when we were playing around with your product, it was just really, really refreshing, to like work with a product that was doing what we would expect it to do, and it was just really fun.
And even some other things we didn't expect. When we went into the simulator and looked at when we saw the colorblind stuff, we were like, oh, this is great. And then at the bottom in the right-hand corner, it says low vision check. and it makes the screen blurry so you can simulate low vision. I was like, this is awesome, because it really is, people don't get color contrast from a general standpoint. I mean, they get the concept of like, who cares? It's not that important. But when you show someone a blurry design and all of a sudden they can see that, boy, these two colors, the border between these two colors kind of goes away when I have yellow against a gray or a light blue against something else. That's powerful. It's really a great visual. I use a program called Funkify, which is a browser plugin that allows you to simulate tremors, like hand tremors and low vision and things like that. But that's an add-on. It's something, like you said early on, you didn't want it to be something else you had to add. You've built these kind of extra tools right into the program, which it was really, like Chad said, really refreshing to see that kind of thing.
Cool. And I think I have to give credit to our product designers and product managers. It was, a lot of the features you've talked about, we pretty much had to innovate it, because there really weren't any tools that you could just go and look and say, hey, how do you do, color contrast, and make it part of the user experience, right? And so a lot of these features, I have to give a lot of credit to the product designers that worked on it. They did a good job, and I'm glad, we're still testing it, but I'm glad you liked it. Because a lot of these were, hey, let's take a stab. Like, I think the only thing that we had a reference was the accessibility checker. That one, a lot other tools had accessibility checkers, and we could reference other tools. But a lot of the other stuff, it was like, hey, we got to figure a way out how can we incorporate this as part of the design process, and come up with a user interface or a user experience that was just as seamless, but incorporates accessibility in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Eugene, I have a technical question for you, because like, I know as a developer, right, like you're not writing, exporting to the PDF format, right? Like you're leveraging some type of engine in the background, right?
Yes.
And would you be willing to share like what PDF engine you, or do you even know like what you guys decided to go with?
So I have a very high level. So I'm a software engineer, but I don't write code for Venngage anymore. I wrote the first version of Venngage like 12 years ago with a bunch of other people, but I have not, they don't allow me to write code anymore, just because I'm actually not that good. So
Sure.
But we're not using any, I know that we're not, using anything special. We are using, basically third party exports, and I believe that the export we use is what we call what everyone calls like a hitless Chrome PDF export tool, which takes whatever's in your browser, runs a hitless Chrome in the back on the server, and then export it as a PDF. And then we do do all the stuff that's necessary while it's exporting to ensure that it's readable and accessible and compliant.
Well, that's a really good point, because you guys are a bit unique, right? Because you're not writing, your product is a web-based product, right? It's not a self-standing application. So you're right. In my brain, I was thinking like, oh, he's using iText or he's using something like that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you're an online platform, so you can leverage some of those other tools that a standalone application might not be able to leverage. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm quite sure it's pretty standard. What we're doing is probably pretty standard. I'm sure a lot of other design tools use the same technology and same libraries we use. Obviously, there's a lot of other work that has to be involved. And they're just not doing it, right? So,
well, and that's where I think you're kind of throwing the gauntlet down. You're really kind of drawing the line in the sand, saying, "Look, we didn't do anything special. We didn't come up with some groundbreaking new thing. We used the tools that were there, but we cared about accessibility to build the mechanics into our program to allow people to not only check but also learn about accessibility." I think if you were a designer and you wanted to learn about accessibility, I think it's a great way to kind of, as you're designing, look at some of the checks and balances in the program and get more familiar with it. Have you guys thought, I know that you have the improve text feature that allows you to, I'm assuming, use AI to revamp some of the verbiage. Have you looked at or explored AI to write alt text for some of the charts and graphs? Because I know you have like donut charts and progress and things like that. Have you thought about that?
Yes, we have, and it's actually in the product right now. So we have AI generated alt text, AI powered, automated alt text for images and for all of the charts at the moment. Yes. Yeah,
great.
so yeah, if you upload an image, you can just click on if you don't want to write it your own, you can click on the generate and then
there it is. I'm looking at it right now. Auto generate alt text. I don't think I saw that before.
Yeah. It's fairly new. And then we have it for charts, we have it for maps. It probably does 80, 90, it's probably 80%, 90% accurate. And, obviously if you show it a very complex picture, it probably will not be able to figure it out. But we've tested it, and I've tested it a fair bit as well. For fairly, run of the mill kind of normal pictures, it does a fairly good job. And for charts that aren't like overly complex, where the data is quite easy to understand, it's not bad. I wrote about it. Obviously, it doesn't know the context. It can just tell you trends, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't understand the context, but it can tell you, hey, which are the top 5, is it increasing? Is it decreasing? It can tell you all of the objective data analysis.
Well, I'm looking at it right now, and we use the sample document that we've been looking at in our previous podcast, and I just told it to auto generate. And this is a bar chart with 2 data series across registered, premium, and business. And here's the alt text. The number of registered users is projected to increase from 1.27 million in 2027 to 1.97 million in 2028. Premium users are expected to slightly increase from 0.10 million to 0.12 million. Similarly, business users are projected to grow from 0.05 million to 0.06. That's great alt text. There is nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, it shows the comparison. It shows the trend. It talks about the different data point, the different 3 different data series. I'm excited for that, because I think charts and graphs and infographics, Chad and I do a class called The Secrets of Writing Effective Alt Text. And one of the hardest things is giving people that formula for how to digest and write that alt text. And if it's not perfect, this is a great start to be able to add to it. So, kudos to you guys, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we took a lot of the best practices, did a fair amount of research, and obviously we're using OpenAI, like there's no secret there.
Of course,
everybody uses them, and we're just crafting prompts that we have tested and worked with that generates the type of alt text that is the best practice for charts, like you said. And you're right, it's a great starting point. I mean, I've done a lot. So we're we started as an infographics company. So we do a lot of charts and a lot of data visualizations and fairly complex things like diagramming and all of that. We haven't gotten into the diagramming part yet because it's very, very complicated. But that's like the next step we're taking.
Well, Chad, it would be great. We might have to sit with you and go over some of our approaches. I'm thinking of the org chart, Chad, and some of our flow chart stuff, sharing our experiences about how we approach accessibility might help you in figuring out how to incorporate that into a programmatic, kind of accessibility.
Yeah, that would be great. I think we are about to release the diagramming feature. It's in beta right now. But obviously right now you'll have to manually write the alt text. But the next step is always, hey, let's get some, generation and AI in there and figure out. And yeah, it would be great to pick your brains and leverage some of the best practices.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, I will tell you, we've talked about the program online. I mean, on our podcast before, and you're obviously a sponsor for this month for the podcast, and we appreciate that. Yeah. I think that, if we could give, I'll ask you if you could tell anyone out there who's using an online design platform, what makes Venngage the go-to choice? Why choose Venngage?
So if you care about accessibility and you don't want to play the whack-a-mole game where you're always chasing, documents, so if lose documents that are out in the wild, and worrying whether it'll be accessible or not, something that your team created or part of your staff created, you should have tools that ensure that whatever they produce is accessible, right? It's the easiest way, and that's an accessibility first approach in the design. And you should use something like Venngage, and currently I believe we are the only tool that does that, only design tool, simple to use design tool that has all these features. I haven't heard of any other tool. And so yeah, if you care about accessibility and you want to make that a priority, and you want to easily create a whole bunch of accessible designs and documents, definitely check us out.
Well, and so I'm really curious, Eugene, like, was adding accessibility to your product a heavy lift? Right? Like, was it like a significant amount more work than what you would be doing, otherwise?
I would say yes. So we're a small team.
Okay.
We're a small company. So if we were like a multi-billion-dollar company, maybe not, but we're a small team. We're about 50, 60 people, very small team, if you compare us to our competitors. So the answer is yes. It probably doubled the amount of time it would have taken. So we started this project two years ago. I think if we had just said, hey, if we would just rewrite a platform and not add all of the accessibility features, not make that the core focus, it probably would have been half the time. And there was an opportunity cost there too. So right. At that point, there was all this AI generation had just started, and it's kind of blowing up. We kind of needed to make a choice. We were like, do we kind of focus? We couldn't focus on both. Like, that's just the reality, right. Not for a company our size anyways. We would either build the platform that's based on, accessibility first, or we would, build it based on the, having all these fancy AI tools, generative tools first, and build that as part of the core experience. So we made the choice to build it, to build the accessibility first, make it accessibility first in the design, and generation is part of it. Automated and AI is part of it right now, but it's a lower not say a lower priority, but we had to tack that on later on. So yeah, it was significant. I think that's probably a deterrent for a lot. I feel like it's a deterrent for a lot of companies to want to really invest the time into it. I think a lot of it is just not understanding. It's an understanding problem, first of all.
Yeah.
And then it's also when they figure out, oh my gosh, it's going to cost me this amount of time and this amount of money to add all these features. And not only that, if I wanted to make it accessible first, I have to redesign a whole bunch of user flows and UX. And then they're just like, well, no, like we're not going to do it. Right? So yeah, it's definitely a risk for sure.
I do think it's going to pay big dividends for you, right? Because, kind of taking the professional designers out of the equation, right? I mean, if you're a professional, you're going to be using InDesign and the Adobe products, but for the, I want to say like beginner to intermediate, right? I mean, either they don't have the money for a product like that, right? I mean, it is, what is it, like $600 a year ish for a subscription to Creative Cloud. So either they don't have the money, they don't want to spend the time to learn the product. They just want a quick product that they can use to create something visually interesting, right? And Dax and I get this a lot where people will give us a PDF created in, well, let's be honest, Canva, right? Or any number of other products. And at that point, the level of effort is pretty significant, right? Because we're starting from ground zero. Right. So, they're like, oh, I created this, nice looking brochure. I was able to do it in a couple of hours of my time. Didn't cost me anything. Right. And then they give us a file and we're like, yeah, this is going to be a couple $100 to make this accessible. Right. And they're like, what? Right. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? That there's a knowledge barrier there, but there's also a barrier, within the product itself. And, if if we could get the word out, right, that tell people like, hey, listen, if accessibility is on your radar, right, if at any level you're trying to make an accessible PDF, from products you're designing, it's a really easy recommendation to suggest Venngage, because the level of effort is going to be significantly lower than with many of the other products. So I commend you. I think you made the right choice, and even though you may not be seeing the return on that investment right now, I got to believe that it's going to happen for you, for sure.
Well,
I
there,
mean,
Ben,
I believe it
go
too.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I said,
Well,
I believe it too. I mean, we're committed. So,
Cool.
Well, Ben Franklin said the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of price is forgotten. And when people, people love to get that quick, low price, good, feel good thing. But then when they realize the functionality of it is not there, it's always more painful. And then they ask why does it cost so much? Why? Well, because you designed it the wrong way there, person. And so it is definitely a hard thing to really get around. And I will say, text help is one of the programs that comes to mind for me that was in your situation and chose the other way. Text help is a text to speech tool that's used in higher ed. And so what they decided was, back before tags were created, they used the reading order panel as the construction order of the objects to read the content. And when tags came out and this new order was decided, they said, no, we're not changing. We have a clientele. These are people who can see. They don't need to read this tags thing. We would have to redesign our entire platform to account for this. We're not going to do it. And so they have a much smaller market share than JAWS or NVDA, because they decided that it wasn't worth basically stripping everything down to the bare bones and redeveloping, where you guys have taken this approach of, look, we have the opportunity to do this. Let's do it now and make this tool something special. And also, we talk about the professional design tools. Now, InDesign has quite a bit of accessibility features, but they don't have a colorblind checker. They don't have a low vision check. They don't have the ability to highlight all your headings and look at what level it is. They don't have the ability to reorder those headings and kind of switch things around. That's all stuff you have to do afterward in the PDF. So while we can say the advanced tools have a leg up, I will say your tool has a leg up in a lot of areas where other tools that are more advanced maybe just aren't considering.
Yeah, I think in InDesign, you still have to put in an Acrobat, right? And still look at a bunch of stuff. I mean, I'm not an InDesign user, so I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that InDesign can do, but InDesign also falls short, right? And, like I said, I always tell people I work under the 80-20 rule, where I can do about 80% of the work in InDesign, and then I have about 20% of cleanup to do in Acrobat after the PDF is made. And that's for a variety of different reasons. The suggestions have been made.
We have reached out to the people
Right.
at Adobe multiple years. In fact,
I think we're going on 5 years. I think 5 years I've been asking for this stuff.
So it's been an interesting journey. So.
Yeah.
We had a call this week with a higher ed, a fairly large higher ed organization, and their professional designers who were using InDesign were looking at our tool, and they were using a lot of the the plugins and all that to make their PDFs accessible. And they really liked our tool, and in fact, they were saying that we could use this, even though they were professional designers. We could use this to produce whatever they wanted to produce, because it was just so much easier for them. And I was like, yeah, we didn't design it for professional designers. Venngage is like, we're in a category, we call it the non-professional creator category. So, but I'm happy that there are some professionals who are considering using us as well, because of the accessibility features, not because of our design features.
Well, I think if you are, and this goes to anyone listening right now, if your mainstay of document design is a 1 to 5 page document that's pretty visual, you're not using advanced footnotes and endnotes and references, you're not doing super complex tables, it's a lot of normal, what we would consider basic layout. This is an amazingly great tool that's really, you can jump into it and with a very limited amount of training to know kind of how to use the checker and what to do, be able to produce quality accessible content that what I call no significant barrier. They're not perfect, they're not going to be exactly, PDF UA compliant, but they're going to be really close, and in many cases they are going to be completely PDF UA compliant. But I'd much rather know that my document's going to go out 90% there than wonder whether or not somebody's going to even be able to open it or read it and be able to get through the content in the right order. I mean, that's even itself is a hard thing in certain cases. So we applaud you. So Thank you so much. So as we close here, let's talk about what's on the horizon for Venngage. Kind of tell us what your next steps are.
I mean, as I kind of mentioned, we are going to integrate diagramming, which is a very complex type of visual, right? And you can imagine the challenges there, just the technical challenges of someone using, assistive technology, reading, an org chart or something even more complicated than an org chart that has multiple branches and all of that, and it can go either way, left, right. So we're working on that. It's, I would say, fairly high complexity. It's a fairly high complexity project for us. It's the last, not the last, but it's one of the final pieces of the migration from our older platform to this platform. And then we're adding a lot, as you kind of mentioned as well, we're adding a lot of automated, like AI generated alt text to as many types of things as possible, just to give people at least a starting point. And so they don't have an excuse of, I got to write this big paragraph of text, especially for charts. Like I said, we do a lot of infographics. We have a lot of infographic templates, and just making that process a lot easier. So that's I'd say that those are the big next steps. And then we're trying to get the word out. We're trying to launch. We're trying to launch nationally or internationally, and trying to get people more who are interested in accessibility to at least try us out as an alternative, because it doesn't seem like there's an alternative out there right now. So that, but that's more of a marketing and more of a, I guess, a product launch kind of a effort.
Awesome. Well, we're really glad that you were able to come and sit with us and kind of tell your story and get the word out. And hopefully our listeners will go to venngage.com, and that's 2 N's, VENNGAGE.com, and check it out. I actually was pretty amazed at all the templates you have. And I was, I spent some time kind of poking through there and looking at the different ones. I'm like, wow, this is a lot. This is pretty cool. So we encourage all of you out there, if you haven't gone, go take a look. It's good stuff. And we don't say that just because you're the sponsor. Honestly, you wouldn't even be the sponsor if we didn't think that the product was worth it. So we definitely try to be very agnostic about what products we support. They're either good products or they're not. And we only, talk about those products that really we think are benefits to the people doing what we do.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being on the show.
All right, Eugene. Thanks again for joining us. Well, once again, we want to thank Venngage for being our sponsor. As a reminder, Venngage is a design platform not just about creating visuals, but also about inclusivity and accessibility. So be sure to head on over to venngage.com. That's VENNGAGE.com. My name is Chad Chilius.
And my name is Dax Castro, where each week we unravel accessibility for you.
Thanks, guys.